the vision has to be carried not by one individual, it has to be carried by the people of God, by the elect. And so, failure to carry it out, as it was outlined here, when God outlined this directive to the children of Israel, you see over in Judges we read, they didn't carry it out. They didn't complete it. They didn't carry it out like God said to carry it out. Failure to carry out God's policy explains how that they attained only partial victories of the promise. Partial parts of the promise they obtained. They won partial victories, but they didn't get total and entire. Listen, that's still going on in that land today. It's still going on in Israel today. They have not had complete and total victory because the nation as a whole does not serve the true Messiah. We have Jews that are being converted and are coming to a realization that Christ is indeed the Messiah, but the nation itself as a whole have not recognized that yet. Some of them refuse to recognize that. And so as a result, they're only having partial victories here and there. God has sustained them. There's no doubt about God has got his hand on them because he sustained them. And when they're surrounded by all the opposition they're surrounded by. But and with these geographical divisions of the land as well contributed to the lack of united action by the 12 tribes. So we read here in Judges a few minutes ago where we see that they were not in unison. They were not united. They weren't congealed. They weren't cohesive. That's the word I'm looking for. There was not a cohesiveness among them. They had several victories, but all of them ended up having a compromise because they were not working together as one unit. Listen, the church in America has got to come to that understanding. We've got to work together as a unit. We can't have a little faction working on this project and a little faction working on that. We've got to come together as a unit. Now I know we have various ministries and things, but they all should tie in and come together, and we work together as a unit, as one. Jesus prayed in John 17, Father, make them one as you and I are one. Pray for the church. And so we've got to come to that understanding. Total allegiance is the basic demand of God. Total allegiance. God calls for the Christian to identify potential idolatrous practices and practitioners of those practices. He calls for us to identify those things and to stay away from those things. So the believer has to find godly alternatives to an idolatrous lifestyle. Listen, we're in a day when everything is being affected that we enjoy, like the rest of society enjoys. Everything is being affected, and Bonnie and I find ourselves almost a constant battle, having to boycott this and boycott that, and not support this any longer, not support that any longer, even though some things are necessities. And we've got to start looking and finding other alternatives to shore up those things that we're having to cut off. Here and there, we're having to cut things off. We're stopping our subscription to Netflix because Netflix has decided they're going to support abortion, and they're going to boycott the state of Georgia for their anti-abortion law that they passed. And so we can't fund a lot of money and support things like that, and not have a clear conscience about it. We can't do that. So we're dropping our Netflix subscription. If you have a Netflix subscription, I would suggest you do the same thing. Because there are some good godly things out there that we can look at, that our money won't go to support those ungodly causes. That's the things that God's people have got to start being informed about and being aware of and start acting accordingly. Because let me tell you, once you come again to the knowledge of the truth and you don't act on it, you're responsible for it. Amen, Pastor Mike. I know that's hard, but that's good preaching if you are doing it. Hallelujah. So God demands total obedience, total allegiance. We need the encouragement of other Christians, and we don't need temptations of unbelievers to be yoked up with as we seek to follow God. Just one thing I'm going to mention, and I'm shutting it down. To underscore the prohibition of idolatry. A while ago we read where God used the name jealous. God called himself jealous with a capital J. I want us to understand something there. That name that God called himself by, that he used, that it did not refer to a shallow, fleshly, childish human emotion. Okay? Jealousy as we know it most times is really shouldn't be. Jealousy as we know it is well, let's get down to brass tacks. It's really a huge sign of lack of confidence. Insecurity. That's what we're looking for. It's a huge sign of insecurity. When we act jealous like kids and teenagers do and stuff, and some grown-ups do too, when we get into fits of jealousy and what's called a green-eyed monster, things like that, when we get wrapped up in that, that's of the flesh. That's a human emotion, and that shows a huge sign of what's the word I used a while ago? Insecurity. That's not the kind of jealousy that God is. God's not an insecure God. And that's not the kind of jealousy that, listen, a lot of times we place things as jealousy that aren't really jealousy. In other words, like this. I'm not jealous of my wife to the degree that I'm afraid that I'm insecure. I'm afraid that she's going to, forsake me and run off with somebody else or anything. I'm not insecure in that manner. That's not to say it would never happen. I don't believe it would. I think I know her well. She's just not that type of person. But that's not to say it won't never happen, but I'm not insecure in that. If another man pays her a compliment, I'm not insecure about that. If he even flirts with her a little bit, I'm not jealous over that. I'm not insecure about that. But if that guy insults her, or he walks by her and he slaps her on the rear, and I'm there in my presence, there's going to be some trouble. There's going to be some problem. That's not jealousy. That's being defensive. That's protecting. That's protection. That's not jealousy. That's two different things. Now, the kind of jealousy that God is calling himself here is that type of jealousy is protection. He's being protected. And when he says he's jealous, it was intended to emphasize that God will not tolerate divided loyalty from us. He's not going to tolerate it. In other words, you can't hold Satan's hand and hold God's hand both at the same time. That ain't going to happen. It don't work that way. God is not going to tolerate dividedness and divisiveness. And also, he doesn't tolerate disunity in the church, which speaks to us in volumes. So, we ought to honor him as the one true God and give him something more than just lip service. Obedience to God and unity among those who are elected by God. We are the elect. They're prerequisites for achieving the victory in God's mission. God does have a mission for us. And again, that mission, I may not live to see it completed. You probably won't live to see it completed. But we can get a mission started. We can from this point on keep moving in God's mission. We've moved to some degree. We've seen that. We've moved in it over the last 18 years. We've seen God do some amazing things. People still say, how does such a small church do so many things? How does a church so small with so few people? How do y'all get so much done in the community stuff? And our only explanation is God. That's the only thing we can say. God. We have to give him the glory and the credit for it. There ain't nothing that we can do. It's God. So we can continue to move in a mission that God has called us to and keep moving with that until we move off the field of battle. That's the odds of that. The odds of that happening are greater than us actually, any of us in this building, actually seeing that total mission come to fruition. Now, I don't say that to be discouraging. It should be encouraging to us. Because if we can see it, until the time we leave and stand before God, if we can see that mission taking place and see it come to fruition, that means we're leaving a great legacy for those to follow. Amen?